No one saw this coming, not Washington, not Brussels, and certainly not Amsterdam. Yet here we are. The Netherlands, one of America's closest allies, has made a move that could send shockwaves through the global semiconductor industry. And it's not backing down. The implications are staggering when you consider how much hinges on this single decision, a bold move that could disrupt America's entire tech war strategy with consequences no one was fully prepared for. The Netherlands has chosen to defy U.S. pressure, potentially unraveling the global semiconductor supply chain. ASML, the Dutch tech giant controlling 90% of the global lithography market, was expected to fully comply with Washington's semiconductor export bans, particularly targeting China. Instead, reports indicate ASML continues shipping deep ultraviolet (DUV) machines critical for chip production to Chinese companies despite Washington's objections. This decision undermines U.S. efforts to limit China's semiconductor capabilities and raises deeper questions. Is the Netherlands carving its own path in global trade, or is this a calculated act of economic brinkmanship? ASML's stance is especially significant given warnings from its former CEO, Peter Wennink, who argued that cutting China off from advanced semiconductor technology would only accelerate Beijing's push for self-sufficiency. Recent events suggest he was right. China's Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation, SMIC, has already produced a 7-nanometer chip despite heavy U.S. sanctions. This breakthrough challenges Western tech dominance and signals a potential technological shift. If ASML keeps supplying China, is it prolonging its market dominance or hastening its own irrelevance? ASML's extreme ultraviolet (EUV) lithography machines are the crown jewels of the semiconductor industry. Essential for manufacturing the most advanced chips, each machine costs over $380 million. Without them, China would lag behind the US, Taiwan, and South Korea in chip production. The Biden administration pressured the Dutch government to block ASML from selling EUV machines to China. But the situation is more complex. ASML still dominates the market for older but crucial DUV machines, vital for everyday electronics. The US wants to stop these sales to China too, but the Netherlands is resisting. The financial stakes are enormous. China accounted for 46% of ASML's total sales in 2023, generating over $7 billion. Cutting off China could create a massive revenue gap, shifting dominance to Chinese-backed alternatives. The Netherlands faces a dilemma. Complying with U.S. demands risks ASML's financial stability. Defying Washington could strain relations with a key ally. What appears as defiance may actually be economic survival. Dutch officials are balancing diplomatic pressure while safeguarding ASML's global leadership. The Dutch government heavily subsidizes ASML, and yielding to U.S. trade policy risks, making the Netherlands economically dependent on American interests. Complicating matters, China has hinted at blacklisting ASML if export restrictions tighten. Reports indicate China is stockpiling ASML machines, accelerating domestic lithography technology, and investing $143 billion in its semiconductor sector. Dutch officials must weigh whether caving to U.S. pressure now will cost them the Chinese market in 5 years. Washington assumed China couldn't produce advanced chips without ASML's EUV machines, but that assumption is crumbling. China produced 70% more advanced chips in 2023 despite sanctions. If ASML continues supplying China, it may accelerate Beijing's technological advancements, narrowing the semiconductor gap with the West. Major U.S. chip makers like Intel, Nvidia, and Qualcomm are watching closely. Export restrictions haven't reduced demand, they've reshaped the supply chain. Chinese firms are finding workarounds, sourcing chips from subsidiaries and third-party suppliers. If ASML keeps shipping to China, is the US inadvertently fueling China's self-sufficiency? Huawei's Mate 60 Pro, featuring a 7-nanometer processor, shocked the industry. Now, China plans to scale this technology further, backed by a $45 billion state fund for domestic semiconductor firms like SMIC and Yangtze Memory Technologies. Analysts warn that ASML's continued sales to China could hasten the rise of competing lithography technologies. This situation exposes fractures in Europe. While France and Germany publicly support U.S. restrictions, behind the scenes, frustration grows. European chipmakers like STMicroelectronics and Infineon are lobbying against full bans. If the Netherlands resists U.S. pressure, it could inspire broader European defiance. China controls 77% of global battery production, but relies on high-performance semiconductors for electric vehicles, EVs. ASML's EUV machines are critical for advanced automotive chips. Despite U.S. export controls, ASML's DUV shipments help Chinese firms advance domestic alternatives. China's EV sector, the world's fastest growing, could dominate the supply chain, pressuring Tesla, Volkswagen, and General Motors. China's semiconductor production surged 38% in 2023, outpacing expectations. SMIC's 7nm chip, made with DUV machines, was once deemed impossible. ASML's defiance has emboldened South Korea and Japan, whose chip exports to China jumped 41% in early 2024, signaling a global supply chain realignment. ASML's $7 billion in Chinese sales in 2023 can't be easily replaced. Analysts predict a 20% revenue drop if ASML fully complies with U.S. restrictions, leading to layoffs and investment cuts. The Dutch government, viewing ASML as a national asset, hesitates to impose a full ban without trade compensations. But if China develops its own lithography industry, ASML risks losing both revenue and technological dominance. This isn't just about semiconductors, it's part of a larger economic standoff. China has restricted exports of gallium and germanium, key chip materials, in retaliation. The U.S. is expanding CHIPS Act subsidies to $39 billion, while the EU rushes its $47 billion European Chip Act. The ASML dispute reflects a broader economic Cold War, with potential for further tech restrictions, supply chain nationalization, and forced corporate alignments. If ASML keeps selling to China, the U.S. may impose secondary sanctions on European firms. China's $45 billion semiconductor fund aims to develop lithography systems by 2026, threatening TSMC and Samsung's edge. European firms like Infineon and ST Microelectronics push for trade autonomy, fearing over-reliance on U.S. policies. Europe has long balanced U.S. and Chinese interests, but ASML's decision may mark the end of its neutrality. Dutch resistance shows European nations may no longer blindly follow Washington. China exploits these divisions, testing Western unity. If China secures an ASML alternative within a decade, it could redefine global power dynamics. The Netherlands may have acted for short-term economic reasons, but the long-term consequences could reshape alliances and the global economy. If ASML loses its edge to China, this moment may be remembered as the day the West lost its computing monopoly. This isn't the end of the semiconductor war, it's just the beginning. A new player is emerging, one neither the US nor China expected, and it could change everything.